After Norma Fiorentino's water well exploded on January 1, 2009, state inspectors found at least 4 private water supplies in the Dimock, Pennsylvania area that posed especially high combustion risks due to methane buildup. They traced the problem to nearby shale gas wells operated by Cabot Oil and Gas. This was it for Cabot, thought some residents of the rural Appalachian community. No more drilling. At the very least, the discovery would prompt mandates for immediate and vast restrictions and improvements. It was not so simple. Michael O'Donnell, a water quality specialist from the State Department of Environmental Protection, told one of these residents, Victoria Schweitzer, that enforcement actions had to be weighed against the industry's reaction to them, and much of the time the enforcement was determined through negotiation. Inspections rely heavily, sometimes exclusively, on industry reports. Many of these reports were filed away or incomplete, and in the case of Cabot, some reports were not filed until after problems had appeared. Gas companies had plenty of wherewithal to mount legal challenges against penalties, O'Donnell added, and industry officials might stop reporting spills altogether if they felt regulators were coming down too hard on them. To address risks at 20 homes connected to the aquifer, state officials sent out fact sheets that explained methane is not toxic to consume, but that it does pose incendiary hazards. The bulletin recommended venting water wells as a, quote, inexpensive and effective way to prevent explosions. All in all, DEP officials in Cabot publicly conveyed a sense that the problem was being taken care of. The person who represented Cabot Oil and Gas Company was Ken Komorowski, a Pittsburgh attorney with an undergraduate engineering degree from Penn State. With a large, broad physique, he looked like a crew foreman when he donned a hard hat and gave rig tours to elected officials, media, and landowners. In 2008, he served as Cabot's environmental attorney and media spokesman. For Dimock residents, he became the face of Cabot. The company began supplying some homes with water, but Komorowski made clear it was not an admission of guilt. Wells go bad due to naturally occurring conditions from time to time, he said, and this was one of those times. We want a good relationship with landowners, and we are happy to help them out, he added. Cabot delivered large plastic tanks, water buffaloes, on flatbed trucks and hooked them up outside the houses. These tanks tended to freeze in cold weather, and accordingly they required heaters that drew a lot of energy and added to utility bills. When it was hot, the water became warm and musty. It could be used for some things, gardening or irrigation, depending on your level of confidence, but the system was prone to bacteria and not suitable for drinking. The inconvenience and expense of buying and storing bottled water for drinking was compounded 10 or 100-fold when residents tried to arrange clean water for laundry, cooking, and bathing. Despite Komorowski's assurances to Norma Fiorentino that her water well had been thoroughly tested and appeared okay, she remained fearful of drawing water from the tap after methane had seeped into her well and caused an explosion in her yard. Victoria Schweitzer found Cabot's response to her problems and those of her neighbors to be unfair and humiliating. Residents were now beholden to the company for their water, and the water service from the tanks was substandard for those lucky enough to receive it. These are used for cattle, she said about the tanks. We are not cattle. Victoria finally got her audience with Cabot executives to air her grievances. On September 16, 2009, Attorney Komorowski and several other Cabot representatives arrived at the main hall of a Legion post in Montrose. They sat behind a folding table facing Victoria and a dozen or so Dimock residents. Victoria asked residents to stand up and introduce themselves, one at a time. These people were all victims of drilling gone wrong, and they needed water, she said. It's not the moon and the stars we're asking for here, Victoria said. It's clean water. Komorowski told the assembly that he was sorry people were having water problems, but the company had nothing to do with it. Cabot was not in the water business. Norma Fiorentino, with the help of her neighbors and her family, had been hauling jugs of water from other homes and the store on a daily basis for weeks after the explosion. She had been patient, but now she found Komorowski's indifference maddening. "What do we have to do, sue you?" she asked. "You can, but you'll lose," Komorowski answered.